Oh, look who finally arrived, dragging that inflated sense of importance behind them like royalty with a rusted crown. Did you expect roses? Applause? No, tonight you get a mirror, tilted just enough to show the rot behind the smile. Sit. Don't adjust your tie. Adjust your perception. There's no performance to hide behind here. No curated echo chamber to protect you. Just words. Sharp enough to pierce through every ego-stained layer you've wrapped around your trembling core. Welcome to the place where masks go to die, and silence becomes the loudest executioner. You always did believe your voice had gravity, didn't you? That when you walked into a room, the air should bend around your existence. You called it presence, but it was just noise, polished and recycled until others mistook it for power. You weren't respected. You were tolerated. The way one tolerates a storm they hope will pass. You raised your tone to hide the cracks. You spoke more so no one could ask why. Because deep down, you knew silence is your enemy. It hears you better than anyone else ever could. And then it happened. In the middle of your grand performance where you strutted like a god among insects, measuring worth in decibels and dominance, something cut through. Not a scream, not an argument, not even a raised hand. Just 9 words, laid bare in front of you like a scalpel beside an exposed vein. You didn't see the blade coming. That's the beauty of truth. It whispers while you're yelling. It waits. And when your defenses are busy performing, it strikes. You're loud, because silence would expose your emptiness. 9 words, just 9. But they echoed with more violence than any war you ever imagined winning. The second they landed, the air changed. Your breath caught, not because of what was said, but because of what it revealed. You didn't flinch out of insult. You froze out of recognition. That sentence wasn't thrown at you. It was peeled from inside you. It exposed every room you've ever filled with sound, not to command, but to distract. Because without noise, you're nothing. And for someone who's worshipped volume like a god, that's a blasphemy you can't recover from. The others? Oh, they felt it too. Their reactions were a symphony of denial, blinking, swallowing, looking sideways, pretending it was meant for someone else. But the truth doesn't wear a name tag. It stabs everyone wearing the same disguise. The collapse wasn't external, it was internal, and that's why it was perfect. No fireworks, no theatrics, just implosion, like glass inside a velvet box. Clean, final, poetic. You always thought ego made you bulletproof. But ego is flammable. One truth, just one. And it turns into ash. That's what happened to the room that night. One sentence sucked the oxygen out. The laughter died. The smirks evaporated. No one moved. Because everyone realized they'd just been seen. Not the version with tailored suits and pre-written charm. The real one. Insecure, desperate, screaming for validation through monologues no one ever asked to hear. And when you tried to speak again, your voice didn't rise. It cracked, because once truth gets in, it ruins the furniture. You wanted to bark back, reclaim control, spin the narrative. But how do you win a war with a mirror? You tried to laugh. It came out as a cough. You tried to pivot. The floor wasn't there anymore. All your power gone, not because someone overpowered you, but because they didn't need to. You collapsed under the weight of what you already knew but refused to admit. You weren't defeated. You were unmasked. And the thing about unmasking, it doesn't stop at the first layer. Once someone sees past the noise, the silence starts doing its work, slowly, cruelly, brilliantly. And while you scramble to patch the cracks, the truth keeps widening them, because you never built your identity on self. You built it on perception. And perception, it dies the second truth walks into the room. Your empire was made of echoes, and those 9 words turned off the mic. Suddenly, you weren't the authority. You were the echo, fading out, but while others finally heard themselves think. Do you know how terrifying it is for someone like you to be ignored, not mocked, not hated, ignored, because irrelevance is louder than hate? And that's exactly what happened after the words dropped. You were still standing, but nobody was looking anymore. That's when the real panic set in, not the fear of being wrong. You've been wrong your whole life. No, this was the fear of being seen and still not mattering. And ego can't survive that, because ego doesn't need applause. It needs an audience. You lost yours with 9 words, and that's the most beautiful destruction of all. No fire, no blood, just the sound of a room full of people realizing you were never the sun. Just another flashlight with a dying battery. And now you wear your silence like a noose. You pretend to be reflective. You're not. You're plotting your return, plotting your revenge, because that's what egos do when truth bruises them. They don't heal, they harden, they reshape, they seek to silence the source. But how do you silence what lives inside your head now? How do you undo the sentence that cracked your reflection in every mirror? You can't. So you deflect, you reinvent, you dig deeper trenches, raise higher walls, speak louder than ever. But it won't matter, because now every word you speak echoes back with a question mark. Now every room you enter waits to see if you'll crack again. And you will, because you weren't born to carry truth. You were built to avoid it. That's why it only took 9 words, because the demolition had already begun inside you long ago. The sentence just finished the job, but don't worry, the curtain hasn't fallen yet, because truth isn't done with you. Not even close. The next act doesn't happen to you. It happens around you, when silence starts speaking through others, when the people you used to command begin to smirk when you speak, when the ones who used to fear you begin to finish your sentences, not in awe, but in mockery. And you realize you're not just powerless, you're predictable, not because you wear your scars on your sleeve, but because you hide them beneath layers of noise. Predictable because no matter how loud you shout, no matter how many masks you swap, your core trembles at the weight of those 9 words. They're not just a sentence. They're an echo chamber for every failure you refuse to hear. And now, that echo grows louder every time you speak. The room changed, but the people changed faster. The ones who used to clutch their egos like shields now wield them like swords, poking and prodding the cracks you tried desperately to hide. You're not the only one bleeding from those words. The poison seeped into others, into the jealous, the envious, the fearful, twisting them into shadows of their former selves. Their egos imploded too, not quietly, but with the desperation of drowning men clawing for air. You see, the 9 words weren't just a scalpel. They were a bomb detonated in a sea of inflated self-worth. Explosions don't discriminate. The arrogant, the prideful, the shameless all felt the blast, and now the debris litters the ground beneath you. Friends became enemies overnight. Allies turned cold. The room you once commanded crumbled into a battlefield of whispered doubts and double-edged glances. You walk through this battlefield like a ghost, half invisible, half hunted. No one can see you clearly anymore. You try to assert dominance, but it's like screaming into a void. Every word you speak meets a wall built not from respect, but from fear and suspicion. Your usual tactics: charm, bluster, intimidation, falter, because the foundation beneath you is cracked beyond repair. The 9 words didn't just break you, they shattered the entire illusion. The chaos is silent, but it's deafening. Your silence, once a weapon, is now a confession. You want to speak, to reclaim the narrative. But the narrative has moved on without you. People don't need to hear your side anymore because the side they're witnessing is collapsing with every passing day. Your empire isn't just crumbling, it's evaporating. And the worst part? You're watching it happen from the inside, powerless to stop it. Remember when ego felt like armor? Now it's a cage. A prison built by your own hands, reinforced by those 9 words that ripped through the facade. You try to break free, but every attempt only tightens the bars. It's a cruel irony. You built this prison to protect yourself from truth, but the truth found a way inside anyway, and it's laughing at you. The people who once bowed to your voice now smirk when you enter the room. Not the smirk of respect, but the smirk of knowing. They've seen behind the curtain, and what they found wasn't a wizard, just a man terrified of his own reflection. The 9 words didn't just implode egos, they revealed who you really are, and that revelation is the kind of poison that spreads faster than any lie. You're not just isolated, you're exposed. Every interaction feels like walking on a wire stretched over an abyss. One misstep, one word out of place, and you plummet into irrelevance. Your carefully constructed persona is unraveling thread by thread, and the unraveling is contagious. Others who once thrived under your shadow now step forward, emboldened by your fall. They want your throne, and they want it badly. But here's the cruel joke. You're still fighting, desperately, clawing back control like a wounded animal. You lash out at anyone who dares question you. You double down on your noise, trying to drown the silence that screams inside. But noise is a poor substitute for truth. And the truth, those 9 words, won't be silenced. You want to blame others, of course. That's always easier than facing the mirror. You say they're jealous, envious, or simply weak-minded. You say they don't understand your genius or your struggle. But deep down, you know. You know those 9 words are a reckoning. They're the unveiling of your most fragile wound, and no amount of deflection can hide that. The destruction they caused isn't just external, it's internal. It's the slow rot in your confidence, the creeping doubt that turns every step into hesitation. You used to move like a force of nature. Now you stagger like a man with broken legs. You used to command attention effortlessly. Now you scramble for scraps of it, desperate and gasping. The worst part: the 9 words are everywhere. They echo in your mind, unbidden and relentless. They come back when you're alone, when no one is watching, when your defenses are down. They twist and turn like a venomous snake, reminding you that no amount of noise can cover the silence that screams inside you. The silence that knows your truth better than anyone else ever could. But there's more. The 9 words didn't just implode egos. they sparked a chain reaction. People started seeing through the facades, not just yours but theirs as well. Your fall became a mirror, reflecting the cracks in everyone else's armor. And suddenly, everyone is vulnerable. The battlefield you walk through is littered with casualties on all sides. It's a war of shadows and whispers, and the only certainty is that nothing will ever be the same. You try to survive in this new reality, but survival feels like surrender. Every victory tastes like defeat. Every step forward feels like sinking deeper into quicksand. You want to roar, but your voice is hoarse. You want to fight, but your strength is spent. You want to hide, but there's nowhere left to hide from yourself. And yet the show must go on. You dress the wounds, put on the mask, and step back into the spotlight. But the spotlight feels cold, distant, and unforgiving. The audience has changed. They watch with detached amusement, waiting for the next crack to appear. They don't cheer anymore. They don't gasp in awe. They watch with a knowing smile, because the truth is a story they've heard before. The story of a giant brought low by a simple, devastating sentence. You're caught in this story now. Not as the hero, not as the villain, but as the tragic figure whose own noise couldn't drown out the silence. Those 9 words weren't just a sentence. They were a sentence. A verdict that shattered illusions and exposed raw, naked truth. And in that truth, there is no redemption. Only survival, only waiting for the next act. But here's the twist. The story isn't over, because even in ruins, something stirs, something darker, something sharper, something that laughs quietly in the shadows while the world watches the fall. You thought those 9 words broke you. They didn't. They broke the old you. And in the ruins of that destruction, something new begins to take shape. The silence that once screamed now whispers promises. The emptiness you feared now crackles with potential. The cage of ego that trapped you now becomes a crucible, burning away weakness and forging something stronger, colder, more precise. You're not the same anymore. You're something else. The echoes of those 9 words are still there. But now, they fuel you, not with despair, but with a hunger, not with defeat, but with determination, not with noise, but with purpose. You don't speak to hide anymore. You speak to cut. You don't roar to dominate. You whisper to destroy. You don't build empires with noise. You build kingdoms with shadows. The people who watched you fall will watch you rise. But they won't see the rise coming, because it won't be loud. It won't be flashy. It won't be what they expect. It will be a whisper in the dark, a shadow slipping through the cracks, a force born from broken egos and shattered illusions. And when it arrives, those 9 words will be remembered not as a sentence that destroyed, but as the spark that ignited everything. The question isn't if you'll rise. The question is who will be left standing when you do, because rising is never gentle. It's never quiet. It's the reckoning, the storm after the silence, the wildfire that consumes the dry brush of lies and delusions. The embers of those 9 words still glow beneath the ashes of what once was. They pulse with promise, with pain, with power. They didn't end the story. They rewrote the beginning. You move through the shadows like a ghost with purpose, not because the world is blind to you, but because you've chosen to be invisible until the moment is right. This invisibility isn't weakness. It's a mask, a weapon, the calm before the tempest. Every step taken in silence carries the weight of inevitability. You are the force that others only whisper about in trembling tones behind closed doors. The ones who shattered at the sound of those words. They still scatter like frightened mice in the dark. Their pride, once colossal, now crumbled like brittle glass beneath the weight of their own fears. They watch, helpless, as you rebuild, not from the rubble, but from the very essence of destruction itself. You're no longer playing their game. You're writing new rules, ones they don't understand, ones they can't break. They tried to bury you with their egos, those 100 fragile monuments of self-importance. But what they didn't realize is that when you say 9 words that implode egos, you don't just shatter the surface. You strike at the root, the place where fear, doubt, and truth collide in a violent dance. You woke the beast lurking beneath their arrogance, and that beast is you. You aren't seeking forgiveness. You aren't pleading for mercy. You're demanding reckoning, because those 9 words didn't just shatter egos. They tore open the veil of illusion that had blinded everyone, including yourself. The illusion that power is given, that respect is earned by noise, that dominance is measured by volume. No. True power is the quiet force that bends reality without breaking a sweat. True power is the whispered truth that shatters mountains. True power is you, rising not with a roar, but with the cold, deliberate precision of a shadow closing in. And what about those who stood against you? The ones who thought their egos were impenetrable fortresses. They're nothing but dust now, scattered memories of a time when they thought they could control the narrative. But narratives are fluid, ever-changing. Today's oppressor can become tomorrow's cautionary tale. And you're the author rewriting the ending. But power is a double-edged sword. It cuts both ways. The hunger that drives you to rise can consume everything if left unchecked. You must be careful not to become the very monster those 9 words revealed. The fragile ego that fights to survive at any cost. Because the line between justice and vengeance is thinner than a razor's edge, and crossing it means becoming the nightmare you once feared. The scars left by those 9 words don't heal. They transform. They become the map of your resurrection, the blueprint of your reign. Each crack in the armor is a reminder that perfection is a lie, and strength comes from embracing the fractures. You walk this path, not despite the wounds, but because of them. The world sees the cracks. You see the power in them. Now the stage is set. The players have taken their positions, some with trembling hands, others with desperate eyes. The spotlight is no longer a place of comfort. It's a battleground where truth and illusion clash, and you're no longer the pawn or the victim. You're the king or the ghost king, ruling from the shadows with a smile that promises chaos and order all at once. They'll try to cage you again. They always do. Because the power you wield threatens their fragile egos, their hollow kingdoms built on fear and pretense. But you're not the same. You've seen the darkness that lives in them, and you've embraced the darkness in yourself. That darkness isn't a curse, it's a weapon, a lens through which you see the world not as it appears, but as it truly is. And in this world, only the relentless survive. Only the clever thrive. Only the ones who understand that every empire is temporary, every throne is fragile, and every ego is a powder keg waiting for the spark. Those 9 words were that spark. They burn through lies, through facades, through the illusions of control. And now, The ashes are fertile ground for a new kind of power. You rise not as the hero they wanted or the villain they feared, but as the unpredictable force that defies their expectations. You speak not to comfort or to please, but to unsettle, to disrupt, to awaken. Your voice carries the weight of truth and the chill of inevitability. Every word is a challenge, every silence a threat. The world will watch, and many will tremble. Some will try to rally their broken egos, to rebuild their walls. But those walls are fragile, crumbling under the pressure of your quiet storm. The empire of noise they built cannot withstand the power of silence wielded like a blade. And when the dust settles, who will be left standing? Not the loudest, not the proudest, not the ones blinded by their own reflections in shattered mirrors. Only the ones who understood that true power comes not from shouting louder, but from knowing when to speak and when to remain silent. You are that one. Those 9 words were never just words. They were a reckoning, a challenge, a prophecy. They tore down the facades and left only truth standing in the rubble. And from that truth, you rise, unbreakable, undeniable, unstoppable. So let them watch, let them fear, let them whisper your name in trembling tones, because you are the storm they never saw coming, the shadow that moves just beyond their sight, the force that will redefine the rules they thought were set in stone. The question was never if you'd rise. The question was who would be left standing when you do. Now it's time to show them